The DJ dimmed the lights for the father-daughter dance, and I stepped onto the floor in my ivory gown, scanning the room for my dad. Instead, my mother-in-law, Evelyn, snatched the microphone, dragging my husband Julian forward to announce her own spotlight tribute. I looked toward the shadows near the kitchen doors. Sitting on metal folding chairs behind a catering divider, shoved away from the front tables, were my parents. My dad, who worked double shifts to pay for this $45,000 wedding, was staring quietly at his shoes. Evelyn smirked at me. That was the moment I stopped being polite. My parents, Thomas and Clara, are the most selfless people I know. For 32 years, my dad worked as a diesel mechanic, coming home with grease-stained knuckles and worn-out work boots, while my mom managed an elementary school cafeteria. When Julian proposed after 3 years of dating, his mother Evelyn immediately insisted on a lavish, high-society wedding at the Grandview Manor. She talked endlessly about her family's prestige, her country club connections, and how a simple backyard reception would ruin their reputation. Yet, when the vendor contracts arrived, Evelyn suddenly claimed her family's assets were temporarily tied up in trust funds and high-yield investments. She promised they would cover half the costs later, but that promise vanished into thin air. Seeing how stressed I was, my dad quietly withdrew $35,000 from his hard-earned retirement fund, taking on overtime shifts every single weekend to cover the remaining $10,000 in venue fees, gourmet catering, and floral arrangements. He never complained once. He smiled through the exhaustion, telling me that his only daughter deserved to feel like royalty for one day. Julian swore his family would honor my parents' massive sacrifice and make sure they were treated as the guests of honor. I believed him. I foolishly trusted his word, never imagining that Evelyn saw my parents' kindness as weakness, or that Julian would let his mother treat them like second-class citizens at an event they paid for. The warning signs started appearing 2 weeks before the ceremony, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Evelyn hijacked the seating arrangements, insisting that Julian's wealthy associates and country club friends needed prime placement near the bridal stage to secure crucial business connections. Every time I tried to finalize the head tables, she brushed me off, claiming the venue coordinator was handling the layout according to standard social etiquette. Julian constantly urged me to keep the peace. Whenever I voiced my concerns about my parents being pushed aside, he told me I was overthinking, that his mother just wanted everything to look elegant for her circle. At the rehearsal dinner, Evelyn intentionally failed to introduce my mom and dad, letting them sit isolated at the far end of the long mahogany table while she toasted her own side of the family as the true pillars of the union. My father smiled politely through the slight, refusing to make a scene because he did not want to ruin my happiness. The morning of the wedding, the final seating chart mysteriously vanished from the lobby easel, replaced by generic table numbers directed by Evelyn's personal assistant. I was so overwhelmed with hair, makeup, and photography that I trusted Julian when he promised my parents had the best seats in the house. I had no idea that while I was putting on my veil, Evelyn had ordered the staff to banish my hardworking parents into the shadows behind the service curtains. I marched straight past Julian toward Evelyn. She tightened her grip on the microphone, shooting me an icy glare meant to put me in my place, but the timid girl who had spent months trying to please her was entirely gone. Before she could start her rehearsed speech about family heritage, I reached out and ripped the microphone straight from her hand. The high-pitched screech of feedback tore through the ballroom speakers, instantly cutting the music dead. 200 guests fell dead silent. Julian rushed to grab my wrist, his face pale with sudden panic. "Maya, stop it," he hissed under his breath. "What are you doing? You are making an absolute fool of yourself in front of everyone." I yanked my arm away, turned my back on both of them, and faced the entire room. "Good evening, everyone," my voice echoed with crisp, unwavering clarity. "Before we proceed with the groom's family tributes, there is an important detail we must correct. Over there, tucked away behind the service curtains on folding chairs, sit my parents, Thomas and Clara." I pointed directly at the dark corner. Every single guest turned to look. A collective murmur rolled across the tables. "Evelyn decided my parents were not polished enough to sit with her wealthy circle," I said, looking straight at my horrified mother-in-law. She told the staff they were merely casual acquaintances. But the truth is, this entire venue, the prime rib on your plates, the top-shelf open bar, and every single flower in this hall was paid for entirely by my father's retirement fund and his 60-hour work weeks. Julian's family did not contribute a single dollar. Not one red cent. Yet, they sit at the VIP head tables while the man who paid $45,000 for this event is treated like trash. The ballroom gasped in absolute shock. Evelyn's face drained of color, turning an ashen gray as the silence suffocated the ballroom. Her wealthy country club friends began whispering frantically, casting disgusted glances between her and the corner where my father sat. Julian lunged forward, trying to pry the microphone from my fingers. "Maya, lower your voice," he begged, his polished facade completely shattering into desperation. "You are ruining our special day over a petty seating mistake. We can fix this privately." "A mistake?" I scoffed into the mic, letting my words ring out for everyone to hear. "You let your mother humiliate the man who gave you everything. You watched her push him into the shadows and said nothing because you care more about appearances than basic human decency." I looked down at the glittering diamond band on my left hand, the ring that was supposed to symbolize loyalty, protection, and unconditional love. Without a single second of hesitation, I pulled it off my finger. Julian froze, his eyes widening in pure horror. I took 3 deliberate steps toward him and dropped the cold metal into his breast pocket. "Our marriage license hasn't even been filed with the county clerk yet," I stated firmly. "And it never will be. Consider this contract officially void." I tossed the heavy microphone onto the head table. The loud metallic thud echoed through the speakers, marking the definitive end of my relationship. I turned my back on the stunned crowd, lifted the heavy train of my wedding dress, and walked straight toward the service curtain where my parents were standing in stunned silence. I took my father's trembling hand, wrapped my other arm around my mother, and led them out through the grand double doors of Grandview Manor. Behind us, absolute chaos erupted as guests began abandoning their tables, leaving Evelyn and Julian alone to face the catastrophic fallout of their exposed greed. We drove directly to a local diner, where I spent the evening in my wedding dress eating cheeseburgers and laughing with the only family that ever truly mattered. The next morning, I instructed our wedding planner to cancel all pending vendor tip distributions, redirecting remaining security deposits back into my father's bank account. Because the officiant had not yet submitted the legal marriage certificate to the state, the entire union was dissolved immediately without costly divorce proceedings. Julian called me 37 times, leaving frantic voicemails begging for forgiveness, while Evelyn faced total social ruin after several high-profile guests withdrew their business partnerships from her firm over the public scandal. I blocked them both permanently. My dad returned to his normal routine with his retirement savings restored, standing tall with the dignity he never should have lost. Walking away from a spineless man was the easiest choice I ever made, because loyalty to the people who raised you will always outweigh a fraudulent vow.